climb, come join us for circle time.
Hello. We are so glad you're here with us. If you enjoy this episode, please rate, review, and share it so that we can reach more ECEs and childcare workers. My name is Bre, and I'll be your host. Today, we're going to be discussing how immigration impacts the early childhood education and care workforce and what we can do collectively to support the rights of migrant workers. Here with me today, I'm so excited to introduce to all of you Sarom Rho, who is a coordinator with the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change, a workers' organization with a membership of migrants and farm work, care work, and low-wage work, which includes international students, refugees, and undocumented people. MWAC supports migrants across Canada to access rights and organize to build power in their sectors, while campaigning to change federal and provincial laws at the intersection of immigration, labor, and access to services. MWAC serves as the secretariat of the national coalition called the Migrant Rights Network. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarom. We're thrilled that you can be here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Bree.
Okay, so we're going to get right into it. This is a big topic, so I think we're going to start kind of surface. So, what's happening with immigration policy right now, and why should ECEs be aware of what's going on?
I'm glad we're putting our heads and our hearts together, especially in this time, because right now we are witnessing a massive and quiet crisis unfolding in real time. Canada has taken a sledgehammer to immigration in the past 2 years as the affordability crisis, which is really a crisis of inequality, has gotten worse. And it's done that because migrants, like other marginalized and vulnerable sections of our society, are being scapegoated for a crisis that we did not create. This is the largest reduction of temporary study and work permit holders in the country, migrants. Migrants are our friends, our co-workers, our classmates, our families, and our community members. And right now, every day, 3,000 permits are expiring. And the Prime Minister is doubling down and saying that this is necessary, that Canada has control over its immigration system, but that's a lot of rhetoric. What we're talking about is people that we work with, that we enjoy life with, who are not just numbers, but real people. Right now, the immigration system is aiming to slash um, migrants by just 5% of the total population. So between 2025 to 2027, an estimated 1.6 to 2 million people. So people who are already living here, working here, paying taxes, holding our community together, people that we, enjoy life with are facing expiring permits with real way to access permanent residency.
It's it's heartbreaking, like absolutely heartbreaking.
Absolutely. If I can just kind of say, why does this matter to early childhood educators, to this sector? It's because the sector runs on the really hard work of people who give care, and that is citizens, permanent residents, and increasingly people on study and work permits on migrants. So by a couple different reports, over a third of Canada's childcare workforce consists of immigrants and migrants, non-permanent residents, which includes international students and those on who are on postgraduate work permit holders. So, imagine your 3,000 permits are expiring every day. People are already working as early childhood educators, as childcare workers. Imagine you're walking into your childcare center tomorrow morning. You look around the room and picture losing, one out of three of your coworkers over the next couple of years. This is just a really devastating picture. It also means that it allows the sector to not be able to raise the floor when it comes to ensuring decent wages, not only for migrant, all childcare workers, safe and healthy working environment protections, as well as other important things like good child to worker ratios, ensuring that staff are not burnt out, ensuring that there are real protections for the very important workers who care for children and do the education work of building our society.
Mhm. Yeah, it is so deeply connected to decent work and professional pay. So to kind of continue on this thought, we're hearing out in the world that December 2026 is a big date. Can you break this down for us? Why is this date of really big concern right now?
So there are a couple different things. First, the original 5-year bilateral agreements signed between the federal and provincial governments for the Canada-wide early learning and childcare system, which gave over 58 billion into childcare. These agreements are set to expire later this year. And at the same time, a number of work permits and postgraduate work permits are expiring, and it's happening every day, but particularly in the fall, there are massive spikes. So we're seeing more and more people who are ECEs and ECAs who are packing up their bags, unsure, being uprooted from their lives here, and also having to do the work of saying goodbye to the children that they have been taken care of and to the coworkers that they've been working with. We know that CWELC as well as childcare is such an important step forward when it comes to gender justice, when it comes to ensuring that women and queer and trans people are able to meaningfully participate in the workforce, have dignified lives, and childcare
Mhm.
is such an important part of that. This is a massive step forward to ensure that there's greater funding for it, but these agreements are set to expire. Of course, the immigration justice fight is not the only fight. It is a crucial fight in raising the floor for all childcare workers in the sector and ensuring that this country has a robust system where care is socialized and properly acknowledged and paid for. Right now, federal projections are already showing that care occupations are facing severe and chronic shortages. Many people who are listening to this podcast, you are in the sector. You know how tough it is when
Mhm.
wages are not, matching the cost of living or schedules are unpredictable. That we're hearing this contradiction that there are not enough workers, and yet the workers who want to stay in the sector are not able to because of things like burnout, because of things like low wages, and because of things like their permits expiring and having no real meaningful program for permanent residency. So, what we're saying at the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change and AECEO is that in order to make sure workers stay in the sector, it means ensuring decent wages, predictable, stable schedules, health and safe and healthy retention mechanisms. But that's currently not what's happening in the immigration policies that are being rolled out. Just to give you an example, last year, fewer than 10,000 frontline care workers across the country were able to get permanent residency, which means that it leaves upwards of 100,000 or 125,000 migrant care workers completely stranded. And
Wow.
this which is being exacerbated by a divide and rule strategy, right? Where migrants, including migrant care workers, are being scapegoated for this crisis of inequality we're seeing.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure ECEs, anyone that's listening to this podcast knows very well the dire situation that we are in, the ongoing recruitment and retention crisis, which CBELC has definitely helped, but has not solved. And I think right now we're hearing that there's quite a bit of fear around the loss of our beloved migrant coworkers and the rippling effect that that could potentially have on an already quite severe crisis.
So right now, one of increasingly more and more former international students who are now on postgraduate work permits are childcare workers, are ECEs. And the requirements to access permanent residency are just impossibly high. And at the same time,
Mhm.
they're changing goalposts. I don't really watch sports, but even I know that you're not allowed to change the rules in the middle of a game. That's just simply not what you're
Yeah,
allowed to.
true.
And anybody who does watch sports will back me up. But that's constantly what's happening when it comes to immigration, is that people make plans and including, having to do things like have 1 year of high-waged work. And yet when they get closer to the time that they want to apply for permanent residency, suddenly the program has been cut and slashed, which is what happened um, about 18 months ago. Or they're right now big federal programs under what's called express entry under consultation, and they're about to change, which means that those who have been here for years are suddenly having the rug pulled out from underneath them. This is really quite stressful, especially for a section of workers who are young, who have left home at kind of a young age, are experiencing and building their lives here, and have essentially spent a lot of formative time here in school and in work. It also, some of these other challenges are also faced by those who are on closed work permits. So these are work permits that tie migrants to one specific employer, which means that, of course, the employer has a lot of power over them. It's
Right.
very to say no when the future of whether you can stay or leave in the country is tied to your employer. What is amazing, though, is that despite the abuse and exploitation that many migrant care workers face, many do say no. They do exercise this incredible power and often collectively the right to refuse and say no when they see injustice, say no when something is not right. And I have the real gift of being able to organize with care workers who face this kind of extreme stress at the intersection of immigration and labor injustice and still build kind of collective power and really know that right now we need unity in the sector in order
Mhm.
for them not just to get permanent residency and migrant justice, but also to ensure that care workers are properly valued, right? And that really means that if there's a care crisis in the country, migrants are part of the solution, and that we need to
Mhm.
care workers, we need to care for migrant care workers.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing way of framing it because you're right. The way that the system exists right now wouldn't exist without migrant workers. Okay, so I just saw today actually the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change posting about changes to the Ontario Works and ODSP program. I was wondering if you could talk me through kind of what that looks like and why that has become a pressing issue.
Absolutely. I'm glad we're talking about it. This is part of that larger trend of scapegoating migrants. This is specifically about what's happening in Ontario, and the Premier of Ontario, Premier Ford, has been under a lot of fire recently for things like members of his cabinet spending tens of thousands in public money for
Mhm.
fancy lunches, for booking hotels, even though they live right in Toronto. You know,
Mhm.
majority of us, including childcare workers, transit, we live like, an hour or like an hour and a half away from where we're working. And so transiting is just part of our lives, and we don't get compensated for that time that we lose. And yet we have some very wealthy people and people who are really supposed to be accountable to the public, not making 30-minute or 20-minute drives home, instead booking fancy hotels using taxpayer money. We saw that he has a $2.8 million private jet that Premier Ford bought and then returned, as well as, a number of other things like, closing work early, right? We're all working in the summer, and yet he abruptly shut down the legislature. And so he's been under a lot of fire. And so what is a very easy way to change the narrative and to distract, right? Again, use this divide and rule strategy, which is to blame some of the most marginalized people in society. Many of us out there already know that Ontario Works and ODSP is needs to needs changing because the money is actually not enough to sustain life. It's really a single person in OW receives only $733 a month, which is nowhere near enough to pay rent or buy groceries or meet any basic needs. But a couple last week, the Ford government changed these rules as a way to point the finger on and blame migrants to explicitly exclude people based on their immigration status. And one of the stories that MWAC has put out is the story of one of our members, who is Vanessa. She's a mother from Jamaica who worked as a home support worker caring for elderly people. And during the pandemic, she fled abuse from her ex-partner with her entered the shelter system. And after losing her job, she just temporarily relied on OW while looking for work in childcare. And she's one of the people who was able to survive, domestic violence. And she later became permanent resident and she returned to care work. But now, under the new regulations, this anti-migrant policy, migrant women on temporary status who are in similar situations can be explicitly denied financial support. But it also includes other people who are needing support because of things like illness, unemployment, or other crises in their lives. And already it was very few number of migrants who were accessing OW and ODSP, but blowing
Mhm.
the story, it means that the premier, as well as other politicians, are able to distract us from really where the money is going, and it's public money that is being pocketed very privately.
Right. Yeah, that's not the update I was hoping to hear, but it is unfortunately not surprising. I really appreciate you bringing it back to this, like how migrant workers are consistently being scapegoated for problems that they are not contributing to it at all. So thank you so much. That was really helpful. It's not always that easy to break it down in a way that where we can really understand what the impact is. We've talked a little bit about some of the challenges that migrant workers have been facing. I'd like to focus now on support. What what could an ECE who holds citizenship do to actually support migrant ECEs right now? What actions can they take to actually make a difference?
I think, first of all, kind of caring for each other is such an important part of it. And anyone who is seeing this happen or sees a coworker who seems quite stressed, just kind of checking in and saying, hey, what's going on with you? How can I help? Just kind of opening that door, I think is really helpful. There's a rhetoric right now that's being kind of everywhere you open up the newspaper, you look left and right, migrant ECEs and migrants are being pitted against kind of Canadian or, so-called local workers. But
Mhm.
migrants are local workers, right? They live with us, they work with us, right? There is this idea that migrants are, the cause of wages being low, of that's the reason why, wages are being depressed. But we have really seen reports that show, and in the lived experiences, that it's really these are schemes designed to pit sections of workers against each other, and it makes not us, it doesn't serve our interest or the interests of working people, but it serves the interests of people who want to make profit off of kind of social goods like childcare. Um, So I think rejecting that rhetoric, especially right now, rejecting
Mhm.
voting, rejecting anti-migrant sentiment is so important. And that means challenging it when we see it happen in the workplace, when we see it happen at the dinner table, possibly, when we see it happen in the classroom or the streets. There are also things where we can or where people can organize alongside um, migrant justice groups like the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change, like the Migrant Rights Network, but as well as the many amazing childcare organizations that are really doing the important work of ensuring that we can maintain and improve childcare in this country. So those are two tangible things. One, countering this divide and rule tactic and narrative that we're seeing. Two, organizing together. Um, this September, on the September 20th, on the eve of, Parliament returning, there are massive mobilizations across the country for migrant justice. There's one happening in Toronto, there are ones happening in Vancouver, Guelph, Sudbury, and so many more on our website. So if there is an action near you, please join. Bring signs, bring your kids, bring um, your friends, your pets, and kind of like let's make this day really bright and powerful as a way to counter the kind of hate that we've been seeing. If there are any folks who are also directly impacted, who are migrant care workers themselves on study or work permits, or even without status, reach out to the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change. We have regular migrant support clinics where we kind of do have serve the people programs and do casework. But there also is a kind of peer-to-peer support community, right? So care workers have a committee and they regularly meet and come up with strategies to kind of have a say over, the future of their own lives, their own work. Um, and also just being part of a community that does that life-sustaining work of lifting each other up, holding each other down when times get tough is so key. So if anybody knows of a migrant care worker or is one, let's connect because we are much more powerful when we're united together.
Thank you so much for that. And to anybody listening, we will make sure that links to where the rallies are happening will be shared in the show notes, as well as just general links to connect with the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change if anybody is interested in seeking those additional supports. That is amazing work that you're doing. Such a needed and valuable resource at this time, always, but especially it seems right now. I think we were chatting a little bit before we started recording about like the importance of personal stories. And I'd love to hear if you have a couple of like impact stories about migrant ECEs and childcare workers who are navigating this right now and what that looks like and feels like for them.
Yeah, I want to highlight a story of an incredible organizer and ECE named Mahek, who served as the local union president for QP 5575. On a postgraduate work permit that was expiring and was a real anchor for her community, her coworkers, the children that she worked with. She was telling me stories of how when she organized work sites and to fight back, right? And right now, and at the time that she had to leave, they were in the middle of negotiating a collective agreement, right? She served as the local union president, and increasingly more migrants are part of unions and are kind of stepping into these jobs. This is really hitting us. The cuts have been hitting us everywhere. But what stands out to me is how the story she recounted about, being there for the milestones of the children that she worked with, right? Their
Mhm.
birthdays and how deeply unfair it is that people have to get uprooted so suddenly and so quickly, simply because these policies are not meant to serve workers.
Mhm.
Canada, it does have an aging population. Canada does is kind of needing to make advancements to ensure that there's robust childcare so that people are able to be part of the workforce. This is a women and gender justice issue. And there is a care crisis at our door. Constantly, there are
Mm.
reports that there are not enough workers, that there are constant labor shortages, but there are workers. There are both migrant and domestic workers who can be, meaningfully contributing in the sector in dignified ways if there are dignified pathways for them to do so. And part of that
Mhm.
is to ensure that people do have permanent resident status. Instead of having an immigration system where some people come to the country on temporary permits and are denied all the rights and protections that everyone else has, we want the opposite. We want to ensure that when people come to the country, when people are here, everyone is treated equally. And today, the only way for people to have the same rights and protections as everybody else is permanent residency. It is the single most important mechanism. It's not just a piece of paper that allows a person to stay or leave. It is the mechanism for people to be able to access equal rights. And that is crumbling beneath our feet lately. And so Mahek, despite being this important anchor, was unfortunately had to leave.
Mm.
But I know that she's still very much around and kind of present in the struggle. And to up to the moment that she had to leave, she was out there talking about this crisis of expiring permits, talking about the need for better working conditions for ECEs. And she is not the only one. And she constantly said that she's not the only one, that there are so many others who are just like her. And so it's so great that I get to organize with other migrant childcare workers who do this, including one who actually just filed a Ministry of Labor claim to demand unpaid wages after being,
Wow.
despite and taking that kind of risk, being brave and courageous to do that, even though she's on a work permit, to say that I know what my rights are and I don't accept this. We need to again exercise our right to say no, to refuse when there's injustice. And even after filing the claim, she is trying to organize more workers to encourage them to also speak up and say that if you're not being paid correctly for this work, it's not enough for families to say, oh, you're like family to us. It's not just about that. It's making sure that we're properly compensated and that there's proper value for the work that care workers do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I wish it was enough to say that we just love our work because I would assume the vast majority of us do just love this work, but that's not reality. And the risk, the additional risk that migrant workers are facing, makes that even more so. Thank you so much for sharing those stories. I think it really highlights the treacherousness of this situation, um, and how quickly it can unfold. So thank you, Sarom. This was absolutely amazing. I really, really appreciate the time that you've taken to share and the stories that you've shared with us. I hope that this episode serves as kind of like an overview of some of the things that are going on, but that also encourages people to take action wherever they are to be able to support migrant workers in their communities. Before we sign off, I wanted to just highlight that we are hoping to co-host an event, the AECEO and MWAC, sometime in September. So more details about that will be released as they are available. But this is not your only opportunity to stay connected to this important work. Please make sure to check out the show notes as well for really important links. We'll try and provide some more background information for you too. And just another like absolutely massive thank you Sarom, for being here. I'm looking forward to re-listening to this episode.
Thank you so much for organizing all of this and the work that you do to put this podcast out. Me, like everybody else, we're always on the move, and it's like always so great to have something to listen to. So thank you, Bre, and thank you also for collaborating and being along. And I'm really glad that we're alongside each other in this shared struggle. Yeah, things are
Yeah.
going up, as long as we keep our heads up, our spirits up, and our hands connected.
Yeah, us too. We are so grateful to have this connection and to be a piece of the really, really important work that you're doing. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider becoming a member. The link to join us will be in the episode description. Your membership makes a difference in the lives of ECEs and childcare workers, children, and families, and allows us to continue doing this work. To all the members currently supporting us, thank you so much. To all the ECEs and childcare workers listening, especially migrant ECEs and childcare workers, you are an essential part of our communities. You deserve care, appreciation, and rights always, and we won't stop fighting for this. Care counts, status matters.